you're varying the grip. You're just doing your best to cling on, just like I suppose if you were drowning and you're just flapping about in the same kind of doing the same manoeuvres until you eventually drown, I imagine, or get rescued. In my mind, it would have been 50-50 as to whether I'd gotten through or fallen off and died.
Welcome to Factor 2 from UK Climbing. I'm Will Treasure. Episode 1, Becoming the Master. We're all familiar with the stories about Cloggy. Johnny Dawes' masterpiece, The Indian Face, is for many UK climbers the epitome of bold wall climbing. But the saga of this face is complex. Anyone who's got a copy of Ken Wilson's books, Hard Rock or Extreme Rock, will know a little bit about this story already. Both books provide a great account of each generation trying to outdo the last. Joe Brown made early attempts on the line that was going to become Great Wall. He retreated abseiling from a peg, and for many years that peg was a reminder that Joe Brown was better than you. Pete Crew thought differently. In 1962 he made the first ascent, using aid on the top pitch. In 1975, John Allen, aged just 16 at the time, made the first free ascent, and it quickly became a test piece for the talented. And eyes drift slightly rightwards, to the line that was to become the Indian Face. Mick Fowler created Spread Eagle, Ron Fawcett made attempts, and John Redhead took a famously huge fall down the wall, falling nearly 80 feet before being held by a stopper that was only half in. He placed a bolt to mark his high point, calling his route the Tormented Ejaculation. Jerry Moffatt was 19 at the time. He was offended by the bolt, so he chopped it. Wearing a pair of sticky rubber fee rays, he headed slightly rightwards to create the Master's Wall. With the Indian Face established in 1986, the next focus was to on-site the lines. In 2000, James McHaffie, still a teenager, attempted to on-site Master's Wall. The common theme on this wall, then, is bold teenage climbers taking up the task of improving the style. Today we're going to hear from Jerry and Kath about their ascents. Their experiences are quite similar, with one key difference, with Jerry succeeding, and Kath having an experience that has lived with him ever since. Here's Kath.
It offers kind of vert, steep face climbing on pretty good holds. And then you've got the Great Wall face, very technical on very good rock, really. Yeah, I find it probably more imposing than Scarfell. For bold wall climbing, it's got to be amongst, it's got some of the boldest facey slab climbs that there is in the UK, possibly the boldest. Like Margins of the Mind, it's really serious. You've not got much gear at all, and the gear that's there isn't very good. And the same on, the routes on the main face, on, the Great Wall, Indian Face, Master's Wall. Kit is appalling. It's really bad. Moffatt was obviously on fire at the time.
No, I don't think I'm arrogant. I mean, if you ask Adam Ondra who the best climber in the world is at the moment, he'd say I am. It's just a matter of fact. Do I think I was an amazing climber? Looking back on it, from what people are doing now, no, I was probably crap.
This is Jerry Moffatt, first ascensionist and self-proclaimed best climber in the world in the early 90s.
If I spoke to you in 83, for instance, when I did Masters Wall, what are your goals? I'd say I want to do the most dangerous climbs I can possibly do. I want to do dangerous, long, hard run-outs. Just because that's what climbing was back then, people drove motorbikes fast. I had a GSXR 1100, which was the fastest bike in the world, and I tell you, every day you got on that bike and I went out, I used to put my helmet on, but just, you want to try and survive it. And there's a history in England of doing dangerous climbs. There's a real history, and it set it apart from any other country in the world, really, at the time. So I wanted to keep the tradition of English climbing going. So I wanted to do as dangerous climbs as I could possibly do. You did dangerous routes, you dossed out at the crag, you didn't have any money, and that's what English climbing was. It was called Masters Wall, and when John Redhead was trying it, I think Fawcett tried it as well, and everybody goes, oh, what are you trying? Masters Wall. I knew that it was going to be a super dangerous route. I knew that I had to be used to being in a situation where any mistake was fatal. So I had to prepare myself and get used to that situation. It's something you have to build up and build up.
So I remember we'd camped in Redeemi and Adam Wild, We hadn't been too healthy the night before. But we walked in there, and I think we did Vember to get going. I can't remember whether we had a guidebook or not. I had to borrow one, or maybe we had an old guidebook that didn't even have Master's Wall in or something. So I borrowed a guide and looked at where we were going, and just set off up.
So there's a very small crux area. So when I got to that crux area, I practiced the next sort of 2 or 3 moves on abseil. So I kind of knew them, and I thought, well, at least I know what I'm doing there.
And, it was 18. It was on site. It was everything. You couldn't. Everything else was cheating. People who rapped and checked out and head pointed. It was just not the scene in my mind. Climbing, I wanted it to be it was a bit of a feat. I wanted to see how far you could push it when you get into desperation.
I was pretty much in control for the first part, and then the middle part, it was a lot harder than I thought. I was just thinking, I want to get off this thing, and I was pretty much fighting for my life. So it was one of those car crash type things. You're skidding down the road out of control. You're just trying to keep the car straight and hope that you come through it. It was a little bit like that. So I was really scared and sort of out of my depth, really. I didn't really look at it very much on abseil. I kind of looked at it and I thought, I don't want to check it out too much because I want to save it for the ascent to make it exciting,
Well, I was young. I expected it to be easy. Not in a nasty way, but I was good on technical terrain. I'd done the bells the week before, found it pretty steady going, soloing big E4s in the lakes fast, and done a couple of other E7s like camouflage. I was reasonably amped up. Adam Wilder said, are you going to go for Indian Face, or are you going to go for Master's Wall? And it did give me an idea, I could go for like Indian Face. When you're young, you do have quite out there ideas. The bit after the overlap, it's not totally pissed, but I remember it feeling quite easy. And then the first bit of Indian Face up the groove line felt pretty easy on good side pulls, smears. But then I pulled right, and I think I made some sequences pretty hard for myself. And it just because you could climb almost anywhere. So I shoved on some hooks and carried on. And I remember, I think it was a bit green. I don't think it was perfect conditions, vague memory. I got pretty high, and then got stood up on these edges that I felt I'd done a lot of climbing and just got stuck. Having been up there on my abseil rope now, I can see, you're about 2 meters down right of the foot ledge on Indian Face, but you could climb almost anywhere. You know what I mean? That kind of between 6A and 6C level on that ground. And yeah, I didn't do some sequences brilliantly, but I did. I did commit through them. Every sequence just seems to have 100 possible holds. Do you know what I mean? Like just thumb sprags and little edges, and you might have the right one, then just little side pulls. There's a good little edge and a little one there. Then you do quite a tricky stand up onto this side pull, and you've got this grap, and you can stand rock up and you're almost on a slab, but you still want your hands on. And also that was the first time I was on the cliff, and it might seem, it does seem ridiculous to me that I thought I'll just set off on it, but I think because I was going well, I thought, right, I'll do the harder one first. Yeah, I was knackered when I got there. The thing is, when you're climbing on site, it's very inefficient. So it's not like I'd got there after 20 minutes of climbing and a rest. It'd take me an hour and a half to work out where I was going. It was a bit green. I was looking for gear, but then I probably spent at least half an hour, maybe even an hour, messing about, trying to work out what to do. Do you know what I mean? Try to move right. I contemplated trying to pile up left onto the foot ledge on Indian Face, but yeah, I couldn't work it out, I couldn't commit. And I think it's good that I didn't commit. Maybe if I'd committed straight away, I might have gotten through, but it would have been, in my mind, it would have been 50-50 as to whether I'd gotten through or fallen off and died. But yeah, so I got to a point where I thought, well, I'm totally screwed. There's no way I could down climb. So yeah, I said, I'll drop my ropes to Adam. And he didn't know the cliff either, so he bundled them up, set off around. I'd sometimes rock onto the footholds on the slab, and then I'd sometimes sit back down on my foot on the little ledges with a side pull on my right and this crystal pinch on my left. And then sometimes I'd rock back up and use my outside edges of my feet. And then I'd drop back down, and I'd just vary the position as much as I can. But I was getting tired, more and more tired, slowly. But I was getting more and more tired. Must have been nearly 2 hours. By the time Adam had gotten round, you just, you're in the same position for a long time, so you know the position, so you vary in the grip. You just doing your best to cling on, just like I suppose if you were drowning and you're just flapping about in the same kind of doing the same manoeuvres until you eventually drown, I imagine, or get rescued. And it was epic. The last half hour, I just thought I was, couldn't hang on. Your tendons are absolutely screaming. Imagine like a set of repeaters you've done on a fingerboard, and you're just on that last edge. That's how it felt for the last half hour. I was just in bits. Fingers were bleeding. Yeah, I think quite a few of them were bleeding, and toes were just, it'd come into the sun. The face. I just remember the sun just blistering me, and it felt bad. It felt really bad, and it felt stupid as well. I thought, I am going to die. I am going to die on this bit of fucking rock, and it just seemed ludicrous at that point. It'd come in with this really strong ethic, of on-site climbing, this, that, and the other, and then suddenly it just went out the window. So you're just missing out on all these other opportunities within life. Yeah, I fully thought it was history. I was clinging on for dear life, but it's I'd thrown my rack off to lighten up. Yeah, it was epic. It's the biggest epic I've had in climbing for sure. I remember shouting and screaming for Adam at some point. I was like, Adam, I'd just gotten towards the end. My tether was like, Adam, where are you? And then I remember him swearing back at me, just shut the fuck up. And he was panicking as well. And then I remember the rope draping down to the right. It was about 2 or 3 meters, out of reach. Fuck, I am going to die with safety in reach. And then he pulled it back up, and eventually flung him, and he was out of sight, up on the top of the cliff out of sight. And then he threw 2 ropes tied together. And I remember it draping across me, and God, I was just flapping. I was literally nearly falling off, just grabbing a hold of the bugger. I somehow managed to, I think I did like a slippery hitch, like a loop through and a twist, and it kind of lengthened, and and I swung off, and obviously two like skinny ropes tied together. I went miles, ended up near the base of Vember, and just slithered down, unhooked, and I think we just left. I think they were my ropes. I think I just left them, left everything, and just went and sat by the lake. I think Adam was crying a bit when we got down. I think I might have been. I think I was laughing and crying. It nearly sent me mad. Yeah, I couldn't feel my toes for some time afterwards. I can't remember how long, maybe weeks, because I'd been curled up in rock shoes and high amount of stressful pressure put on them. I was wearing Red Chili habaneros, the orange ones. No, I got on well with them. Yeah, I liked the habaneros. But yeah, physically was kind of fine. Didn't think I'd climb again. It's given me more than anything in life, I would have said. But at the time, it was like, I just didn't know if I'd be able to after that experience, to go near a rock face again. I remember we drove down Cwm Pennant. I just put my feet in the water. We had this awesome egg sandwich, and the food it's the best. I think it's the best food's ever tasted for me. Yeah, just put my feet in the river, and then we drove back, I think, the day after to the lakes.
What I find fascinating about these accounts is that Kath and Jerry had pretty similar experiences on the route. The one difference being that little bit of abseil inspection got Jerry out of trouble and left him feeling invincible. While Kath drove back to the lakes, unsure if he'd ever climb again, Jerry's reaction was quite different.
All around that time I was doing a lot of solos, so every time when I was going up to abseil down to clean it and look at it and stuff like that, I'd solo a different thing. I think I soloed Great Wall, I soloed the boldest, so I think it's called Curving Arete, another sort of might be E3 or E4. Yeah, they were on site. The Great Wall I'd done 3 years ago, but I couldn't remember any of the moves. I wasn't really going to solo that. I was just sort of set up the thing. I sort of started going up the thing for a look and then just carried on and soloed that. So every day I was soloing a lot of things. It might have been the next day I went up and I was feeling so good and so in control. I just thought, I'm not going to die today. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I didn't want to put any pressure on myself. I went up to the cromlech and I just thought, I'd never done cemetery gates. I think I did cemetery gates first. And then I thought, I'll just have a look at the right wall. And then I think I did left wall. I did the foil, memory lane, and cenotaph. I just woke up that day and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it. Rather, I just thought it'd be less dangerous to do them all in one day than do one day, one the next day, one the next day.
So here's an interesting thing. Caff's one of very few people in a position to do all of the routes in extreme rock. He needs to go back to Master's Wall.
Abseiling down it yesterday, I only found like one shit offset RP high up, so I was impressed how much kit I did get when I was on the lead. I think I got a couple of really shit RPs. There's no kit I would trust to lower off, not fall on, lower off. I think the kit has to have changed. I just struggle to imagine how he survived. Yeah, I mean, it did sound like he, that he was surprised that he survived. But yeah, the sideways rock 6, it's in maybe half, half in sideways wire, in not a great looking bit of rock. I mean, and I remember when I did an Indian face, when I checked out a couple of runners, there was that, and then a few metres higher, I think I got like an RP0, and then I got the nest, which I thought the nest was appallingly shit as well.
I belayed John Redden on it. He just abseiled down it, looked at all the holes, put some tick marks with some chalk, knew where all the runners were. He said that he was going to go left from the bolt. Maybe he was, but when I saw him do it, he went right. So he put the bolt where those wires were. Maybe he was going to go left. When I took the bolt out before, for me, it was unethical to put bolts on mountain rock. It is, it's obviously unethical because people don't go around putting bolts on mountain rock, do they? Yeah. Would it have been a better route? Maybe it would have been a better route with a bolt in it. I don't know. It'd be nice to have a load more things in there. Yeah. But at the time, I thought it was unethical. I took the bolt out and did it the way that he was trying it.
There's a certain form of empowerment through doing some dangerous routes, and I think it adds, it's partly it might be the history, but sometimes danger can add quite a lot to a climb, and through your ability to deal with that danger. But you obviously have to go with a good element of caution within that danger. You need to build it up.
It's something you have to build up and build up and build up and build up.
I'd mentally thought through it, so I'd had some strange reasoning, being 18, 19. But I thought, well, I suppose if somebody for affluence kind of injures a leg or something, then they can get well looked after. Do you know what I mean? Like in general, and I knew that I would be screwed, I'd be kind of screwed in terms of work and everything else. And I saw that as a bad thing. So I said I would never let that affect my performance. Does that make any sense? Do you see what I mean? I thought I'm not going to let, the kind of background stop me from, pushing it out. In terms of the history of Masters, I mean, like I say, in my mind, it'll be probably E8, 6B. And I think Moffatt at the time, it was kind of cutting edge and there weren't many around that level. I mean, that was probably one of the first of that level in the UK. He did kind of abseil inspect these things. So that's kind of better than top roping, so to speak. But when you're abseiling, you do kind of get a good idea of what's coming up. And it's very different when you're going from the deck. It's a lot less efficient when you're going from the deck, having not inspected it at all. I will go up there and do it, but I'll brush it, because I've, I think my on-site effort, I give it in 2000. I'm pretty proud of that. And it's sort of thing having brushed it up and dicked about on some of the moves and checked some of the kit, I'd be, I'd confident I could do it well, and in nice, I could make a nice lead and enjoy it with that knowledge of what's coming. And that'll be the last extreme rock tick I've got to do in Wales. And I think it would be good to lay it to rest. I mean, doing Indian face kind of laid that face to rest, because I never thought I would ever go back to that bit of rock. But I did get close. God.
Even though I'm not climbing now, I'm still a climber. So I still dream about climbing. I had a dream about climbing a couple of days ago. I was on some big wall, and it was such an addiction for me For me, it's great to get out of it because it was everything. What they write in magazines and what actually you are like are two different things, aren't they? And that's an opinion that some journalist has written, and they might want to be putting over some sort of, something to sell the magazine or something like that,
Leo Holding on-sighted Masters Wall in 97. He was just 17 and he was wearing a pair of shoes that were too big for him. But it still sees fewer scents. Perhaps the eyes of those at that point in the game drift a little leftwards, as John Redhead put it, to the Indian face. A grander prize, perhaps. After all, Masters Wall has been on-sighted. So the next challenge...
For me, the master would be the person that doesn't fear death and that seems so control of their emotions that they'd walk up to that an on-sight soul of it.
Thanks to Jerry and Kath for their time on this. Jerry's book, Mastermind, is out now. Join me next time for episode 2, 9.5 hours.
I was approached by a guy in the Camp 4 parking lot, which is where a lot of good adventures start. I was being headhunted. And after about 30 seconds of kind of small talk, he said, "Do you want to do the nose in a day?" And I thought, yes, I certainly do.